Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health, and really without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
You ever play a game that stole all your time? You sit down to play and relax, and you realize your back hurts and your jaw's clenched, and it's been 5 hours. That's what we're talking about today.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to episode 133 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 133. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and the lows, the ups and the downs, the good and the bad, the nerd and the murd. I'm a little out of it this morning. My little dog Jaina that y'all have seen on camera before, she's not doing well. She's got pancreatitis.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I spent 3 hours at the vet yesterday. She won't eat today, and got her here alone in the office with me, and so I'm hoping that the pain meds kick in and she eats. So,
Okay.
Worried about her.
She's a good puppy.
Worried about her, but I'll try to get into it. On another note, I know this is old for the viewers or the listeners by now, but I just have to give my rant on how absurdly bad the Dallas Cowboys were last week. It was an embarrassing game. They were not a prepared team. I blame the coaches on that. That is all their fault. I don't think they prepared this team well for this game. Just an absolute embarrassment. Mike Shanks from Two Geeks and a Microphone and I were talking together over Facebook Messenger, and he gave up at one point. He couldn't even watch it to the end. I watched it to the bitter end. It was terrible. Terrible, 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 terrible. So that was the most of my week, except it's been cold and rainy, and I'm tired of it.
Yeah, we got a little snow.
Yeah, I saw that.
They actually had the roads prepared beforehand. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, the low for Miranda up in Wisconsin last week, at one point the feels like temperature was negative 31.
Yeah, no, but no.
Yeah, out on that. It was.
Uh-oh.
I think it was very similar for Stephen Boster of Two Geeks and a Microphone. He posted his low, and it was like negative 31 up in Montana. So it was. Blah.
No, pass. Done.
Yeah.
Do not like.
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right. It'd be 100.
Yeah, but then we'll complain about the heat.
Yes, but I'm not offended by the heat.
I just like it to be nice, you know. I don't know. All right, you got anything for us before we kick it off?
No, not for this episode. I figure this is going to be a long one. There's going to be some talk and some controversy.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, why don't you kick it off?
Okay. Today we're talking about time suck video games. Most of these are PC based. Some of them are console based. I'm just going to go ahead and give out the list. Geoffrey, myself, and Will all have a list of games that we could just sit down and play that just suck up all our time and we're okay with.
Why don't you just go through them one at a time?
Okay. Well, we're going to start with the top of the list, which is Geoffrey's, which is Masters of Orion.
Yep. And I was surprised that it wasn't on your list too.
Actually, once I got your list, I was like, well, we're going to talk about Masters of Orion. Masters of Orion it would be on my list. But I'm happy about the 3 that I picked.
Okay.
So Masters of Orion, often abbreviated as MOO, is a turn-based 4X strategy science fiction game in which the player leads one of 10 races to dominate the galaxy through a combination of diplomacy and conquest while developing technology, exploring and colonizing star systems. Sometimes described as a sci-fi themed spin-off of classic Civilization, this game has proven to be quite enduring, becoming a cult classic in its niche of sci-fi themed 4X strategy games. It has received several direct sequels, and additionally a number of other games published since have been described as inspired by it, with reviewers and players divided on whether any has succeeded at recapturing the feel and gameplay of the original. The game was released in 1993 by Microprose on the MS-DOS operating system. It was ported to the Mac OS in 1995 by Take-Two Interactive and distributed by GameTech. It is the first in its franchise, and rights are held by Wargaming.
You said several sequels. I'm not familiar with more than 1 and 2.
No, I think they're up to like 4 at this point.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't know that I ever saw 4.
Well,
I mean, this is a huge time suck video game. I mean, literally, I could spend 8-10 hours of a day.
Oh God, yes.
And not even notice it going by.
In our YouTube playlist, I have 2 videos for Masters of Orion. One is the opening shot, just so you can kind of get a feel for it. And secondly, is a guy does a playthrough over about an hour of just beating everybody senseless. Mm-hmm. A couple of things he did that I don't agree with. He got Stargates and didn't build them, and I'm like, dude, just build Stargates. Just do. But yeah, he played. He played the Cylons and just beat everybody with technology. Mm-hmm. So how it breaks down, you pick a race. Every race has a specialty in some form. Cylons is technology. Geoffrey likes to play the Bullrothi.
Yes.
Who are great ground troop combat people. I like to play the Sacra because they breed so fast. Because you have to have population to build technology, to research technology. You have to have population to uh, build ships, factories. It works on this principle of slider bars, basically. These slider bars allow you to research or bring up your planet's ecology or build starships or stargates. The animation for 1993 is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's great, and it's fun to play, and it can take hours. I've got it on Good Old Games. I bought it for like $3. Somewhere around here, I have the original box that Don gave me years ago. He's like, "Hey, I brought this for you."
Yeah, and I also have the board game, which we've played.
Yes,
the tabletop game, more like it's not really a board game, but
Masters of Orion is one of those games that you can just play and play and play. The second one, I enjoyed the second one, but it did not capture the magic of that first game.
Oh yeah, and I think I do remember 3 because 3 became more close to Civilization, and I didn't like it as much. I don't like the Civilization games. So yeah, now I remember 3.
Yeah. And you couldn't I think they've released an updated version that you can actually play head to head with the old game. I prefer just playing the old game against the AI. It's so much fun. You basically colonize star systems and try to become the master of Orion. Orion is this ancient civilization, and there's a planet called Orion that you can go and take over. But you have to defeat the Guardian, which is this gigantic killer ship. And once you defeat the Guardian, you get all of the tech that's on Orion, as well as it increases your tech value.
Right.
But you have to have a pretty decent sized fleet to get it. And you have other races that you can diplomatically basically get them in your sphere of influence, so they vote you in as leader of the galaxy. You can take over planets and do it by conquest. Every so often there is a vote on who will be the leader of the galaxy, and you can be voted in, or you can take everybody else out. You can vote yourself in. What's great is you can vote yourself in and then nullify the results and go to war with everybody if you just wanted to. It's one of those games you just like to play and allocate resources to. It scratches an itch in your brain. So if you guys haven't got out there and played it, check out Masters of Orion on Good Old Games. I think it's on Steam too.
It is.
Masters of Orion 2 is also worth a play, but it does not capture the Masters of Orion. You can design and build ships. The ship combat is really easy. It's all 2D as well. I mean, there's no 3D animation, so that bothers a bunch of people. Personally, I prefer the 2D animation for Masters of Orion because it's real simple. You land on a planet, and you have a little icons representing your troops. The other player has a icon separating their troops, and they just pop out of existence, and a little counter runs down. When you have significantly better technology, or you're a better fighter than they are, they pop like popcorn, and we call it the popcorn.
Well, when you have significantly better technology and forces, the AI will stop attacking you and will actually just run from you.
Yeah, they'll run from you or join you.
Yes.
But you got to be careful because that vote comes up at random, and you can't accidentally vote yourself into the galaxy when what you wanted to do was conquer. Mm-hmm. But it's a lot of fun. There's several levels of play. I would start with a tutorial. If you're going to play in a giant galaxy with only 3 or 4 opponents, and that way you can figure the game out. It doesn't take long to figure out how to play the game. It's pretty easy. There are some tutorials out there, but honestly, if you just sit down and play it, you can figure it out.
Yep.
But yeah, it's massive fun, and it will suck up a lot of your time. Love Masters of Orion.
Yeah, me too.
May play some of it today. The next game in Geoffrey's list is Ultima Online. And Geoffrey and I know someone who was at Origin at the time. Actually, a couple of people who were at Origin at the time that this game came out. And the idea of it had been kind of floating around for years, but Ultima Online, or UO, is a fantasy massive multiplayer online role-playing game released on September 24th, 1997 by Origin. It is set in the Ultima universe and is known for its extensive player versus player combat system. Since its release, it has added 8 expansion packs, a booster pack, and dozens of free content updates. The release of Ultima Online Kingdom Reborn in 2007 brought a new game engine with upgraded visuals. So Ultima Online, it was Lord British, or Richard Garriott.
Richard Garriott.
Yeah, Richard Garriott. His handle is Lord British.
And Lord British is in the game.
Yes, he is. He was like us. He was like a geeky guy who liked to play Dungeons and Dragons, but he went to college and there was nobody who would play with him. So he kind of wrote a computer game on his own and then ended up releasing it as the original Ultima. And there were several incarnations. He kept trying different things with Ultima, but eventually he came up with this Ultima Online. He was like, I want to make it like D&D. He wanted to make that tabletop experience for people playing at home. I don't think he kind of quite got there.
Yeah, he did.
You think so?
Yeah, he did. He did. Yeah. You'd have to play Ultima to understand. I mean, so you touched on one thing, the PvP environment. The PvP environment sucked.
Uh-huh.
Not in that it was bad in gameplay, because you had people out there whose goal it was to just ruin the time for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Because
trolls.
If your character was a murderer or a player killer, they turned red, so you always knew they were a murderer.
Uh-huh.
They would sometimes go in groups and kill just to kill. It was sometimes maddening. It was a game that you could literally just play for hours and hours and hours. I had a guild that I belonged to, and we had a hunt every Saturday morning. You
could write macros
so you could write macros and you could cheat, because there were certain things that you needed to do in order to level up, and some of it was very time consuming and very boring. Fishing was one of those.
Yeah, I remember you had a macro for fishing.
We did, because you would click on your pole, then you'd have to click on the water, and then wait for something to come up. And then click on the pole, click on the water, wait for something to come up, if you did. And every time you were successful, you gained experience points, blah, blah, blah. The reason that you did that is because once you became a grandmaster fisherman, you could fish up treasure chests. And those or treasure maps, and those treasure maps would lead you to treasure chests, which you go, there would be these huge spawns and huge treasures. But the other thing about Ultima Online is, number one, it was one of the pioneers in online role-playing game. Number one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it wasn't the first. If it wasn't the first,
No.
It was the first one that was big, right?
No, because you had
WoW.
Yeah, you had World of Warcraft and Ultima that came out about the same time. I think World of Warcraft came out first.
Okay.
But anyway, so you had real estate. You could buy a house where you could store your stuff and you could log your character out safely. You couldn't get attacked inside your house. Well, the world became so full of people. This game was so big that it ran out of real estate. And you could actually make real money
in the real world.
In the real world, selling virtual real estate. And it was incredible the amount of money that was out there. I saw castles, which have a huge footprint,
Yeah.
that would go for tens of thousands of dollars
Wow.
in real money. And the game became so engrossing. It's just hard to explain how engrossing you could get on this game. One of the stories I've told so many times over the years, a friend of ours made a thief character named Bacteria. And what Bacteria was able to do was use the hide and stealth skill, which allowed you to make your character invisible to everybody else, except you could see your character on the screen as gray.
Yeah.
But you could make yourself invisible to everybody else, and you could attempt to steal from them. If you were caught, you turned red, guards could kill you, but outside of town, which is where the guards were, you would turn gray, and be able to be attacked. Well, I'm sitting at home one time watching TV, and Ed, this guy's name is Ed, he calls me on the phone, and
it was Ed.
Yes. He calls me on the phone, and he said, "Hey, there's this guy who left, he was standing at what Ed would do is he would sometimes camp outside of somebody's house that he saw go in and wait for him to come out, and he was in stealth mode, and he could sneak in their house. Well, once you're in the house, everything is open to you, and he could steal from this person." So Ed calls me up and says, "Hey, I just snuck into this castle, and this dude's gone. I can't carry everything because you had a weight limit. I need you here." So I go and I log online. And he tells me where he is. So I'm on my horse. I'm trying to get to the castle. Blah blah blah. And he's like, "Where are you? I'm getting there." And I was almost to the castle. And again, we're on the phone. And Ed says, "Wait! The person just came home."
And Ed was in his house.
And I'm like, "Okay, I'm almost there." And Ed said, "Wait, shh. They're right in the room with me." And I said, "Ed." And he said, "Shh. They're right next to me." And I said, "Ed." And he said, "Shh." And I said, "Ed, they can't hear you." That's how involved you would get in this game, because you're buried in it, and it just, your imagination would just run wild. This game was amazing, absolutely amazing. And I spent years on this game, and hours and hours and hours and hours playing this game just to level my character up and get the master status on the things I was interested in, because you had so many skill trees you could go down, and those skill trees would help you with other things. And so, great game.
Cannot recommend it enough.
Right.
You can still play it, right?
There is a mod out there that allows you to play it. Yes.
Okay. All right. So again, another game that you can go out and play yourself and check it out. It is basically D&D online.
Yes.
And a lot of fun. I still like the physical play of being at a table with folks, but that's me. I'm also kind of analog sometimes. So I see the allure, and I know you guys had a blast doing it.
We did. And I mean, it was so populated. And going back to that real estate, I'm sorry, at one point, Ultima actually opened up a new set of lands that was an exact duplicate of the original. And all this land was open up. But in this new set of lands, they actually listened to some fans, and PvP was not allowed.
Okay.
So you could go back to the old one if you wanted PvP, or you could stay in the new one, which was really cool, because then you were able to get into dungeons that you couldn't get into before, because dungeons were very, very heavily populated by player killers. And so it allowed you to explore places you never could before. And if you're interested in seeing something really wild, what was the name of this cartoon. I have to find it. I'm a newbie.com. I'm a newbie, and that's IMANEWBEIBIE.com. If you're interested in seeing what Ultima Online was like, go see that cartoon. Go back to the beginning and watch it, and it was just awesome.
I am a newbie.com.
Yes.
Nice. All right, our next game in Geoffrey's list is City of Heroes. City of Heroes was a massive multiplayer online role-playing game which was developed by Cryptic Studios and published by NCSoft. The game was launched in North America on April 28th, 2004, and in Europe by NCSoft Europe on February 4th, 2005, with English, German, and French servers. In the game, players created superpowered player characters that could team up with others to complete missions and fight criminals belonging to various gangs and organizations in the fictional Paragon City. 23 free major updates for City of Heroes were released before it shut down. The final live update, where Shadows Lie, was released on May 31st, 2012. And on August 31st, 2012, NCSoft terminated its Paragon Studios development team, ending all production on City of Heroes, with the last day of service on November 30th, 2012. In April 2019, source code capable of running a City of Heroes server was distributed widely. This made it possible to create City of Heroes servers outside the direct purview of NCSoft and revived interest in the game, which by then had been out of development for more than 6 years. As of January 2024, NCSoft has not moved to have servers based on this source code shut down. And on January 4th, 2024, NCSoft officially granted the private server City of Heroes Homecoming an official license to host the game. So this was in the last 2 weeks.
Yep, I've been keeping up with that. This was
okay.
Go ahead.
You and Randy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys played this like religiously at least once a week, right?
Oh,
Even
yeah.
though you guys were living in the same house.
We weren't living in the same house at the time, but yeah. Or
Okay.
no, actually at one point we were, yeah. But yeah. We played this all the time.
Because I remember coming over going, what are you guys doing? We're playing City of Heroes. It was like, oh, well, I'm going to go hang out over here.
Yeah.
But you guys were into it.
Oh, yeah, because this was another great game. Number one, you could make you a hero.
Superheroes.
At one point, they actually came out with an additional version that was City of Villains, where you could play a villain, and they had PvP at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like City of Villains as much, but I played it. City of Heroes was great. Number one, the character generation. Excuse me, I've got this cough.
No, it's okay. It's the weather, man.
Yeah.
It's got me too.
The character generation was so in-depth and incredible. You could spend a half hour to an hour doing nothing but generating your character.
Mm-hmm.
From the power sets you could choose to start off with, because you could there was different combinations you could use. You had blasters, which were heroes that fought at a distance, and they're basically called glass cannons, because they have incredible power at distance. Up close and personal, you don't want to do that. You had brawlers, which were hand to hand. You had defender type character. You had support type characters.
What were the tanks? You guys were always referred to them as tanks. Was it brawlers?
Brawlers, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, incredible hand-to-hand, up close and personal. Could take a lot of punishment. But anyway, you could combine your power sets. Like you could have a fire and ice power set, or radiation and fire. I mean, blah, blah. My favorite one was a fire. So you start off with your power sets. You could then heavily customize your character's looks. I mean, everything. The eyes, the hair, the nose, the ears, all the way down to the feet. Incredible what you could do. And then you create your character and you go out and you start playing. Movement powers were always cool. It with the new release, it doesn't take as long, but you used to have to get to power level 10 to get your first movement power, and then power 14 to level 14 to get the second one, which is something people highly sought off, because then that's where you could fly versus just hover, which is real slow. But anyway, City of Heroes was really cool. You could play solo, you could play with groups. They had various events that would happen where you would do a lot of big groups. And I was really sad when it shut down, because it was a great game. I've known it's been back online for about 2 to 3 years now, I think it is. I've played again. I played as early as this week. And it's a great game. I've had to redo my character from the original one, and it's just such a cool game. As you go out and you fight the different villains that are out there, they're super powered villains and groups, and it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And that's another game I would just literally spend hours and hours and hours and hours on.
Yeah, well, I remember, back in the day, you would talk about it like you were rolling up an RPG character, and I'm like, this actually sounds kind of interesting.
Yes.
But I didn't really want to get into the online role playing. It's just because I prefer the tabletop environment. But again, that's on me. I see the allure. It looked wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you found so much joy in it,
And
because
still do. I've enjoyed playing it again.
Well, that does it for Geoffrey's list. His 3, which were Masters of Orion, Ultima Online, and City of Heroes. Next to my list, I'm going to talk about Risk, but I'm going to talk about a specific Risk game. Risk Hasbro Interactive, 1996. Several video games versions of Risk have been released as Risk, starting with the Commodore 64 edition in 1988 and the Macintosh edition in 1989. Various other editions have been released for PC, Amiga, Sega Genesis, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, Game Boy Advance, and Nintendo Switch. However, in 1996, Hasbro Interactive released a PC version of Risk that included a new variation on the game called Ultimate Risk, which did not use dice, but rather implemented the use of forts, generals, and complex battle strategy. Risk 2 for PC and Mac was released as a 2000 video game, which included classic Risk as well as a board and gameplay variation in 2012. Pogo.com added a licensed version. Risk 2 is not where it's at. It's the 1996 Hasbro Interactive version of Risk, which you can go out and find, but you have to be careful on which one you grab. The thing about this version is you didn't have to play with these standard Risk maps. I wasn't even into the Ultimate Risk, which was fun. I wanted the classic Risk, and I wanted to use the different maps because you could play in North and South America, you could play in Eurasia, you could play in just Asia. So it was a lot smaller. It wasn't as unbalanced as the Risk game, and I could play it for hours. And it's a real simple game. There's some animation. I usually turned it off, but it was just numbers moving into numbers in different territories. But I could play this thing for hours, and I loved it. I loved it so much.
I couldn't do it because every Risk version I've ever played, the computer cheats.
Yeah, the AI could get pretty hardcore.
Not just hardcore, the computer cheated. In every Risk Online I've tried to game I've tried to play, the computer cheats.
I loved this one. I could play it for hours and hours and hours. And the thing was, when I finally got a computer that wouldn't run it anymore, I ran out and I was like, Risk 2. So they made a second version of it. I brought it home, and Risk 2 was just Risk. And I'm like, I already have this on a Sega. I don't want this. I want the game. And for a long time, I couldn't find it. You can get it on Good Old Games now, and I think Steam as well. So it's out there. But yeah, no, I love this one, and I could play it for hours and hours. And honestly, the map of Asia was really good. The map of North America was really good because it was every little every little province of Central America that existed before pre-Columbian times. So you had the little it was all these little states, and it was just a slug match going north or south to get that done. Asia, you had to do some island hopping. It was fun, but it was a hardcore strategy game. And again, not a lot of animation, not a lot of battles and combat. I mean, they had them, but I usually turned them off because they took too long. It was numbers on a map, but oh my god, I loved it! I loved it so much. And yes, the AI was really hard to beat because it cheated.
Yes.
But you could win, and I often did. My next game is Heroes of Might and Magic 3 Complete. Heroes of Might and Magic 3, the restoration of Arathia, commonly referred to as Heroes of Might and Magic 3 or Heroes 3, or abbreviated as HOM 3, is a turn-based strategy game developed by Jan van Kagenhem through New World Computing, originally released by Microsoft Windows by the 3DO company in 1999. It ports to several computers and console systems, followed in 1999 and 2000. In its third installment of the Heroes of Might and Magic series, Heroes 3 was released to universal acclaim by critics and has garnered a cult following in the years after its release. The game received the expansion pack Heroes of Might and Magic 3 Armageddon's Blade and Heroes of Might and Magic 3 The Shadows of Death Hero Chronicles. A series of short introductory games based on Heroes 3 engine was also released. A special version of Heroes 3 titled Heroes 3 Complete, which included the original game and both expansion packs, was released in 2000. That is the one I like. Mm-hmm. On December 10th, 2014, Ubisoft announced an HD version of the game. The new version features updated graphics as well as widescreen compatibility and was released on January 29th, 2015 for Microsoft Windows, iOS, and Android. The expansions have not been re-released because of their source code was lost. However, in 2017, source codes for a full version of the game was found when one of the contractors responsible for porting the game to Mac found the source tools and assets on a hard drive and uploaded it to Ubisoft. So what they do not mention is there is a port on Good Old Games that's been there for 10 or 15 years that you could pick up. It is the full version of the game where you can play all of the different scenarios. Personally, I just like to pick a big world that was player versus player and just go to town. What's great about 3 as opposed to the rest of them, it has the most different types of castles that you can pick. That's why I like the complete version. You could pick the Flux Town, which is all elemental and magic-based creatures, which I know was one that you loved. You could also pick a Death Town or a Demon Town. Well, what was great about this game is you could go and you could start with one type of town and take over different types of towns and build an army of the most massive units. So how it broke down is you go to you start with a town, you build armies, you have 6 different slots that you can fill them in, and they start from the weakest of your town's type of character to the strongest, and then you can increase your town every turn, but it requires money and resources. So you have to take your little army out and go pick up resources and flag little resource producing areas. But you're also, it's turn-based, so you do all of that, and then another character comes along and does it, and then so on and so on, so forth. This game takes forever to play, but you don't notice it. I love this game. I still play it. I'll sit down and play it for a couple of hours if I have time and just zone out. Oh, I can't hear you, Geoffrey. You're muted.
Yeah. There we go. I haven't played it for years, but sorry about that. But yeah, 3 was great. It was definitely improvement over 2, which 2 was a great one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is another one you could literally just play for hours and hours and hours and not notice time go by.
No,
it is incredible.
No. Well, when I take a extended period of time off, I always like to give myself basically half a day to just sit down and play stuff like this.
Yeah.
because I enjoy it, and it scratches an itch, and my kids enjoyed it, and my wife enjoyed it. Cree even picked up 4, and she really likes 4 as well. I didn't like 4
as much at all
because you didn't have the ability to make as many different types of towns and things,
right?
Which is why I like 3. But 4 was a little more 3D, whereas 2 it's 2D. But the artwork in it is so beautiful, you don't even notice it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little combat. You run your guys around, picking up resources, fighting other bad guys. You can get artifacts which strengthen your character or your town. You have pieced artifacts that you could put together that if you put in one of your towns will garner you a bunch of resources.
Mm-hmm.
You can position a commander inside each one of your towns to help with its defense.
That could hold an army too.
Yeah, that can also hold an army. It's awesome, but again, it takes a while to play, and you need to be comfortable with losing towns because you will.
Oh yeah.
I've probably been beaten at that game more than I've won it, but I still love playing it. It's like Pandemic. And you can get these massive maps. One is of North America that I love. One is of Europe. I really love that one too. But those are slogfest. Those are giant, extra large maps.
Yeah.
There's also an underworld element where you can go. There's as big of a map underworld as there is above it. And you can have castles and things in the underworld. It's just a lot of fun. You can just a thought of playing. Get yourself a very fleet-footed character who can shuttle armies back and forth to your main fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Always do that. It will save you time, and that way your best fighter always has the biggest army. Because the worst thing is you get this massive army, and you go and you take a bunch of cities, and you're slowly depleted, and a guy comes along and takes all your stuff by defeating you. Because they do. When you defeat a guy, you get all of his artifacts and things, which you can also go and sell. If you've got 4, great helms of whatever it is, you've got 3 guys, you equip 2 of your guys or 3 of your guys with it, you sell the last one for resources or trade it for another artifact.
Right.
Which in some towns you can do. I love this game. Can play for hours. And the version out there on Good Old Games is available complete. The HD version is nice. I have seen it. It's cleaned up. It's a lot like Age of Empires, which I did not put in my list. I feel sorry that I didn't, but these are the games that I most love and most want to play.
Oh, absolutely. Completely agree. I was really surprised Age of Empires didn't make it into your list.
Yeah. Age of Empires 1 and 2. I like them both. But which they have released HD versions of, which are amazing and wonderful. But yeah, the reason Age of Empires didn't is because there's a game that I love to play and play for hours that I cannot play now, and I want to talk about it because I want somebody to release a version that I can play. Which is the next game. That would be Iron Storm. It's a video game system from Sega Saturn. It was released in 1996 in North America. It is part of the Daisen Ryaku series, which was developed and published by Sega. Iron Storm is a strategy game that takes place within the context of World War II. The game's general premise is to allow players to pick a side, United States, Nazi Germany, or Imperial Japan, and then work their way across several battles within the war. The game takes place in both the Pacific and European theaters. In addition, it is a player wins certain battles, then the path of the war changes. For example, Nazi Germany winning the Battle of Britain will allow for an eventual invasion of America, as will Japan defeating the United States at the Battle of Midway. During battles in campaign mode, the player mobilizes a very large variety of customizable units, tanks, aircraft, submarine, and warships across a hexagon-shaped grid in order to defeat the opposing Allied or Axis forces controlled by the game's AI. In addition, as time progresses, players can upgrade individual units either based on experience levels or as blanket technology upgrades. Experimental weaponry is used in some later battles, including some German jet aircraft like the Messerschmitt Me-262. The map system itself is a static, but real-time 3D animations are used to recreate encounters between various types of units and options that can also be toggled off. I usually toggle them off because if you run the animation on every battle, it takes forever. My problem with this game is all of the ports of it are in Japanese, except for the one they released for the Sega Saturn, which did not do well. I kept a Sega Saturn running for years just so I could play this game. I still have a copy, which I bought online, of the game itself, but I don't have anything to play it on. I know the copy's good, but yeah, I can't play it. It was ported over by Working Designs. This game is not for everybody. It is hex-based, turn-based strategy. And you get to replay World War II, and you kind of need to know what sort of units you need to build. As you take over cities, you can build more units, depending on how much resources you have. The more land you take, the more resources you get. I could sit down and play the Battle of Stalingrad as either the Russians or the Germans for hours. Hours and hours and hours. The invasion of France and Belgium. I had it where I could beat it in 30 minutes. If I turn the thing off, I could beat it in as few as 12 turns. It was amazing. It was so much fun, and I could play it, and I can't play it now. Now, I know that I could go out and buy a Poly Mega, which would allow me to load the game, which I have, into the Poly Mega, and the Poly Mega would store the game and keep it forever. But I don't want to splash out $500 just to play one video game. You know what I mean? It will port it to an HD TV and everything else, but it's not really readily available.
I'm seeing Iron Storm on Steam.
It's a different Iron Storm.
Oh. And there's GOG.
Yeah, Good Old Games doesn't have it. They've got the other Iron. There was another game that came out 4 or 5 years later, also called Iron Storm, which is a first-person shooter World War II game. That's not what I'm talking about. If you see it on GOG, does it have a picture of like a B-36 on it?
No, it looks like that's the first-person shooter.
Yeah, you could find that one out there. I've tried to run it on a PC with a Saturn emulator, and I can't get it to work. I can get the Japanese copy. Matter of fact, Dyson Raikou released several other versions of World War II games, but they're all in Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to read the text in this game. It's not something you can just go, I just click through the text. You really need to know what you're looking at. Because if you run a Panzer III or a Panzer IV up against a Russian T-38, the Russian T-38 will clean your clock. The Messerschmitt ME, the Gustav Bf-109 is a great fighter, not a great bomber, so you have to use them in conjunction with the Messerschmitt dive bombers. I can't remember what they're called. I like to play the Germans. But I also like to play the Americans. It will allow you to play Operation Coronet, which was the planned invasion of Japan. It's actually in the base game. Like, you don't have to play the campaign mode to do it. You just do it. The hardest one I've ever played was Imphal, where the Japanese are trying to invade India. You just can't do it. It's nearly impossible. If you play the Japanese, it's hard, and you can switch. You can go into the game and switch who the player is, so you can play either side, depending on. Even though you picked it a different way, you could go into the game and make yourself the either side of the game and play it from both angles. Again, I could play this game for hours and hours and hours, and I miss it, and I wish I could play it, but I can't. Or I haven't been able to find a way to play it.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't put Age of Empires. I got versions of Age of Empires. That's easy. But this one's tough. We will probably come back and do this again where we talk about some of these other games. Because, A of E is definitely in the conversation. The next game, or the next 3 games, are Will's. Will picked Star Fox 64, also known as the Lilat Wars in the PAL regions, is a 1997 3D rail shooter video game developed and published by Nintendo for the Nintendo 64. It is the second installment of the Star Fox series and a reboot of the original Star Fox for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Star Fox 64 was the first Nintendo 64 game to feature support for the system's Rumble Pack peripheral, which initially came bundled with retail copies of the game. Since its release in 1997, the game has sold over 4 million copies, making it the best-selling game in the series and the 9th best-selling game on the system. The game received critical acclaim for its precise controls, voice acting, multiple modes, and replayability through the use of branching gameplay paths. Like the SNES Star Fox game before it, Star Fox 64 has been deemed one of the greatest video games of all time. A stereoscopic 3D remake of Nintendo 3DS Star Fox 64 3D was released in 2011, and a reimagining of the Wii U Star Fox Zero was released in 2016. The game was also re-released on the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack at the launch of the service on October 25th, 2021. Star Fox 64 is a 3D rail shooter game in which the player controls one of the vehicles piloted by Fox McCloud, usually in R-Wing. Most of the game takes place in corridor mode, which forces Fox's vehicle down on rail paths straight forward through the environment. In corridor mode, the player's vehicle can be maneuvered around the screen to dodge obstacles and can also perform a somersault to get behind enemies or dodge projectiles. The air wing is also capable of deflecting enemy fire while performing a spinning maneuver called a barrel roll. Actually, an aileron roll in real-time aviation terms. Sorry, aileron's a weird word. The R-Wing and Landmaster can charge up their last cannons to unleash a powerful lock and laser. In addition to corridor mode, some stages of the game include multiplayer, and most boss fights take place in all range mode. Star Fox is one of those games that if you are of a certain age, it is the greatest game ever. I think the reason that you and I probably weren't into Star Fox is because we were too old when it came out.
Maybe, because I never played Star Fox.
Oh my God. People Will's age and a little younger loved this game. But, they all had N64s too, and we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because we viewed the N64 as a kid's console, I guess.
Right.
Which is unfair because it was a great console. But yeah, you can. I think there's actually a tank you can play as well. You don't have to be you can be like a ground fighter in conjunction with the airplane, so you get like a combined arms thing. It's a pretty game. For early 3D, it's really pretty. Way better than Xenomorph. It's akin to Starblade. They use basically the same kind of polygon thing for Starblade. Honestly, I think if we'd have been 5 years younger, we'd have loved this game. This would be in our list. And it's well loved, but the problem is every time they try to remake it or put out a sequel, nobody likes it. Because it doesn't capture the zeitgeist. It's like Masters of Orion. Yeah, the sequels are okay, but they're not Moo. Yeah, Masters of Orion 2, awesome game. It's not as good as Moo. And I think a lot of people with Star Fox, they liked the first one. They loved this Star Fox 64, which is why you can get it on a Switch now. And again, this game is available. So far, the only game we've talked about today that's not available is Iron Storm. Or Dyson Raikou. The next game on Will's list is Call of Duty Warzone. It was a free-to-play battle royale video game developed by Raven Software and Infinity Ward and published by Activision. The game was released on March 10th, 2020 for PlayStation 4, Windows, and Xbox One as part of 2019's Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and was subsequently connected to 2020's Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War and Call of Duty Vanguard, but does not require purchase of any of the aforementioned titles. Warzone allows online multiplayer combat among 150 players and features both cross-platform play and cross-platform progression between the three aforementioned titles. At launch, the game featured two main game modes, Battle Royale and Plunder. Warzone introduces a new in-game currency system that can be used to buy stations in and around the map, loadout drops, and key in-game objects, allowing the players to accept and switch between their customized classes and are obtained through purchases with cash currency. Players could also use cash to purchase items such as kill streaks and gas masks. Cash would be found by looting buildings and killing players that had cash on them. At launch, Warzone only offered trios, a squad capacity of 3 players. Solos, duos, and quads were eventually added to the game via post-launch updates. Upon release, Warzone received generally favorable reviews from critics. Warzone was downloaded by 6 million people within 24 hours of its initial release. Good God. By April 2021, the game surpassed 100 million downloads. A sequel titled Call of Duty Warzone 2.0 was released on November 16th, 2022, and a mobile version of Warzone is also in development. In June 2023, Activision announced that the service for Warzone would be shut down on September 21st, 2023 to focus development on Warzone 2.0. Warzone is the second main Battle Royale installment in the Call of Duty franchise following the blackout mode of Call of Duty's Black Ops 4. Warzone differs from Black Ops 4 by reducing reliance on equipment, gadgets, and instead encourages the accumulation of a new in-game currency called cash. The game supports up to 150 players in a single match, which exceeds the typical 100-player size that is seen in other battle royale games. I am not a first-person shooter guy.
I am.
I do not care for these games. I'm not saying I don't see the allure. I think they're awesome. I don't like them.
I do if they're done right. I've played several first-person shooters.
Have you played this one?
No, I've never played Call of Duty. I mean, they're immensely popular.
Yes.
You know, I played Duke Nukem. I played some of the Star Wars first-person shooters. Yep. The hardest first-person shooter I ever played was Half-Life. Half-Life is incredibly hard.
Half-Life, yeah.
But the first-person shooters are very popular. They're extremely popular. I played Halo. They're great games. I can definitely see the appeal, and I know Call of Duty, the various versions have all been hugely popular.
Oh yeah, great titles for Activision.
Right.
And I'm so glad Activision is still around.
Yeah.
You know, because Origin's gone, and so Microprose and some of these other studios that we're talking about, working designs, they've all gone the way of the dodo bird. But Activision's still up and running, you know, and that's nice. But yeah, I from what I understand, Will can play this game for hours. He just, you know, he and buddies and whatnot will get on and play together. So
it's the Duke Nukem knockoff, Shadow Warrior. God, Shadow Warrior was fun.
Shadow Warrior, yes, you like that one?
Yes, that one was so fun. It's so tongue in cheek.
Nice.
I like first person shooters. I can't help it.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan, but again, I understand the allure. I mean, it's kind of cool seeing it from that perspective. You know, from what I understand, most of these games, you can make it as the perspective of you're holding the gun, or you can make it where you're just behind the person. I prefer the just behind the person. It just makes a little more sense to me visually. But again, I'm a weirdo, so you know, I could sit and play Hexa strategy games for hours on end, and most people look at that and go, "My God, that's boring." Yeah, not to me. So you know, I get it. Will's next pick is Madden. Will did not specify which Madden, so I'm assuming he means all Madden.
Probably.
I have played several of the Madden games in various platforms. And as far as sports game goes, you can't go wrong.
No.
You really can't.
And I see the commercials for the latest iterations of it, and it's almost lifelike.
Yeah, it is. I kind of prefer some of the cartoon graphics, but again, that's me. I am a weirdo. I can play X games for hours. Madden NFL, known as John Madden Football until 1993, is an American football sports video game series developed by EA Tiburon and EA Sports. The franchise named after Pro Football Hall of Fame coach and commentator John Madden, also player. No one ever mentions that. He was also a player.
Yes.
Has sold more than 130 million copies as of 2018. Since 2004, it has been the only officially licensed National Football League video game series, and it has influenced many players and coaches on the physical sport itself. Among the series features are detailed playbooks and player statistics and voice commentary in the style of a real NFL television broadcast. As of 2013, the franchise has generated over $4 billion in sales, making it one of the most profitable video game franchises on the market. Electronic Arts founder Trip Hawkins conceived the series and approached Madden in 1984 for his endorsement and expertise. Because of Madden's insistence that the game be as realistic as possible, the first version of John Madden Football did not appear until 1988. EA released annual versions since 1990, and the series name changed to Madden NFL in 1993 after EA acquired the rights to use NFL teams and players. Trip Hawkins created a clone of the Stratomatic paper and dice-based football simulation game as a teenager. The game was unsuccessful due to its complexity, and he hoped to one day delegate its rules to a computer. At Harvard College, where Hawkins played football for the Crimson, he wrote a football simulator for the PDP-11 microcomputer, which he later said predicted that the Miami Dolphins would defeat the Minnesota Vikings 23-6 in the 1974 Super Bowl. It was actually 24-7. After founding Electronic Arts in 1982, the real reason that I founded it, says Hawkins, was because I wanted to make computerized versions of games like Stratomatic. Hawkins later said the company began designing a microcomputer football game. Hawkins first approached his favorite player, Joe Montana, to endorse the proposed game, but the quarterback already had an endorsement deal with Atari, and his second choice, Cal coach Joe Kapp, demanded royalties. In '84, Hawkins approached Madden, and he and game producer Joe Ibarra arranged a follow-up meeting with the broadcaster during an Amtrak train trip over 2 days because of Madden's fear of flying. The EA executives promised that the proposed game would be a sophisticated football simulator, and they asked the retired Oakland Raiders coach for his endorsement and expertise. Madden knew nothing about computers beyond his telestrator, but agreed. He had taught a class at the University of California, Berkeley called Football for Fans, and envisioned the program as a tool for teaching and testing plays. Madden would continue to see the game as an educational tool. When asked in 2012 to describe Madden NFL, he called it a way for people to learn the game and participate in the game at a pretty sophisticated level. Hawkins and Ibarra, during their train trip, learned football plays and strategies from Madden from sunrise to midnight. EA likely expected Madden to endorse the game without participating in its design. Early plans envisioned a 6 or 7 player per team because of technical limitations, but Madden insisted on having 11 players, stating, "I'm not putting my name on that if it's not real." Ibarra, who had played chess, not football in high school, became an expert on the subject through his work, but found that 11 players overwhelmed contemporary home computers. Most projects that are as delayed as Madden are canceled. Ibarra and developer Rick Antoniuk needed 3 years more than twice the length of the average developing process. The project became known within the company as Tripp's Folly, and Madden, who had received $100,000 advance against royalties that EA's outside auditors advised a write-off because it would never be recouped. Boy, were they wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I believed at the time that EA had given up. The company hired Bethesda Softworks to finish the game, but they only got them partway to their goal. While EA used many of its designs, including contributions to the physics engine, within a year, Bethesda stopped working on Madden and sued EA over EA's failure to publish new versions of Bethesda's Gridiron football game. This added to the delay. After a final development push, John Madden Football debuted in 1988 for the Apple II series of computers. Hawkins and an exhausted Ibarra could move on to other projects. Ibarra says all his memories of that are of pain. Now, okay. Having said all that, I agree. It's an incredible game, and I think they really needed to do it the way that they did it. Was it worth it? Of course it was worth it. It makes $4 billion. It's made $4 billion. It's still being produced.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of any other game series, except for maybe Mario, that goes back that far.
Right.
Yeah, and to 1984.
It's still being produced. It's extremely heavily played.
Yeah.
Very profitable. There's also, interestingly enough, there is a curse that's associated with the Madden games.
There is.
Every year, one player is picked to be on the cover of Madden.
Okay.
And just about, I don't think it's every year, but just about every year, the player that is featured on the front of Madden is either A, injured, or B, has a bad year.
Oh, really?
Almost.
So they don't want to be on the cover.
Well, they do, but there's the curse associated with it.
Yeah.
It's just, you can go back and look year after year after year. When they get on the cover of Madden, they either get injured or they have a bad year.
They need to go back to just putting Madden on the cover. Because I know the first one, it's just him crashing through an X's and O's chart.
Let's see who was this year. Who was the cover of Madden?
For 2023?
I'm looking. Hold on. Oops. Josh Allen, but he has not been injured or had a bad year.
Oh, good for him.
So, because he's actually in the playoffs.
Hey, maybe the curse is lifted.
Maybe. Who was 22? I have to look. Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. I know Patrick Mahomes did get injured. Anyway, interesting.
Huh, that's funny. I am not a big fan of EA. I've played some of their games, but it occurs to me that EA basically runs other game companies out of business or just buys them up. Mm-hmm. I've seen them do it several times, and it doesn't make me happy. I like that, that some of the guys are, really, really into game design and development. But honestly, I'm just not a fan of EA. I'm not a fan of Trip Hawkins. Having said that, I think he designed a hell of a game. But I also think that Trip Hawkins kind of takes credit for other people's work. I know that's blasphemy to some folks, but I just get that sense of it. I don't have any proof of that. But other than it being on EA, yeah, it's a great game. I've played it. I don't even like football, and it's a fun game to play. I haven't played it recently. I think the last version I played was on a SNES. Maybe it was a Genesis. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. Because there were certain versions that you could play where you could play different years of teams. Mm-hmm. Like I could play the Miami Dolphins team that went undefeated. What was that? 69, 70? I seem to remember enjoying it, playing that. And there was a version that you could play with like all-time greats.
72.
There was a version that you could play with all-time greats.
Yep.
Where you could get like Walter Payton and stuff like that. It was kind of awesome. But yeah, it's a fun game to play. And as someone who doesn't like sports games, I can sit down and play a version of Madden. It's fine.
Yeah.
Newer versions are a little more complex.
Yes.
It has got increasingly more complex. But yeah, no, I'm with Will. This is a great game, and I can see how people could spend hours and hours and hours on it. Because from what I understand, you can actually play a season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You just pick it up where you left off.
Yeah. That's the whole nature of it. Besides just individual games, you play a whole season. There are leagues out there for this. It's huge.
Yep.
And I did look it up. The Madden curse apparently only about 60%.
Okay.
Of the curse is true. So
still
high.
Yeah. But yeah, they really created a good game, and I think it was a good idea for them to listen to Madden, because if they'd have made a little 6-man football team, it wouldn't have captured the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
You know, taking the extra year and a half to do it really paid off for them.
Yep.
But that's about it for Time Suck games. Sorry this one went long. I kind of figured it would.
That's fine. Fun. I hope people get out there and try some of these games where you can, if they're still available.
Mm-hmm. As far as I know, the only one that's not available is Iron Storm.
Yeah, but
which you can find an old Saturn and a copy of the game, or use a Polymega. But other than that, I don't know. I don't know any other way to play it. If anybody's got any ideas, I am all ears, because I would love to sit down and play this bad boy.
Yeah, I looked it up. I couldn't see anything. So, but anyway, get out there. Check them out. See what you think about them. If you want to send in your list of Time Suck games, we can always do a fan curated episode as well.
Yes, we can.
We're working on one for Laugh Out Loud comedy movies, because we did that, and we're getting fan submissions for that. We've got several already, and we'll be picking those soon.
Yep.
So awesome. With that, we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off Daily Mail, The Independent, BBC, Sky News, Yahoo News UK, and Police Scotland, and this is the murder of Amber Gibson.
Amber Gibson.
So from the age of 3 until her horrific death at the hands of her brother 13 years later, Amber Gibson's short life was blighted by abuse and heartbreak. Amber was born on New Year's Day 2005 at Wishaw General Hospital in Lanarkshire in Scotland, where her brother and eventual killer Connor Gibson was also born 2 years earlier. At just 3 years old, she entered the care system after escaping a home where her father viciously attacked her mother. But though she and her brother were placed with foster parents, Amber herself was never safe from harm. Indeed, just weeks before she was killed in a woodland area in Hamilton, South Lancashire, she had been raped by another man. She was murdered on November 26, 2021 by her own sibling, with chilling CCTV footage showing how Connor Gibson led her to her death. Gibson removed his sister's clothes, sexually assaulted her with the intention of raping her, inflicted blunt force trauma to her head and body, and then strangled her. As if the horrific killing wasn't enough, Amber would continue to be abused even after death, as the man who found her body committed appalling acts of his own on her remains. Stephen Corrigan, who was unknown to both Amber and Connor Gibson, found her body, but rather than alert police, he inappropriately touched her and then concealed her remains. He would later be sentenced to 9 years in jail. And just 5 months before the brutal murder, she had been raped by another man while she was in care. Predator Jamie Starrs was jailed for 10 years and 6 months after raping Amber at his home in Bothwell in June 2021 while she was asleep or unconscious. His DNA was discovered on 39 areas of her body, including her breasts, buttocks, and thighs, and he had only recently been released on bail for carrying out a similar attack on another teenager, and has now been assessed as posing a very high risk of sexual violence. On the night she disappeared, staff at the Hill House Children's Unit in Hamilton, where she was living, tried to discourage her from going out to meet her brother, as workers were concerned about his behavior. They were last seen just before 10 p.m., and neither Amber nor Gibson appeared on the CCTV until he reemerged alone more than an hour and a half later.
He knew where the cameras were.
Mm-hmm. By the time of her death, Amber had spent almost all of her life in the care system, and she was described as the most giving, loving, and supporting, admirable young girl, and Amber had shown great hints of promise. Although she had experienced immense suffering, she had harbored an amazing outlook on life and loved arts and singing. Her parents, Peter Gibson and the much younger partner Anne Marie Adams, are believed to have met online, and by the time Amber arrived, there was a pattern of abuse that was well established. At their home in North Berwick Crescent, East Gilbride, Gibson inflicted appalling violence on the mother of his children, punching her in the face and kicking her between the dates of August 21st and August 2001 and August 2007. Court documents also showed that Peter sexually assaulted 2 young boys and assaulted and raped a woman. The horrific attack by Peter Gibson of the woman, including tying his victim up and blindfolding her in East Kilbride, Lanarkshire. He would be jailed for 10 years for a litany of violent sexual crimes, and he has been placed on the sex offenders register indefinitely. The children were taken out of their parental home and put into care in 2008. Foster carers Craig and Carol Niven were approached to look after them in another Lanarkshire town. Amber and her brother moved into the Lankhall home, but concerns about the older siblings' behavior soon came to light. As Mr. Niven later said, he would not leave the children in each other's company as they were, quote, not a good mix. For a time, they attended separate schools. Amber went to Morehouse Academy around 25 miles away in West Lothian Bathgate, while her brother was a pupil at Keir Campus in Blantyre, Lanarkshire, tripping over that town.
Lanarkshire?
Yes, a secondary school for those with social, emotional, and behavioral needs. Former school friends described him as a loner who was prone to sudden fits of rage. One classmate said, quote, he would talk about killing other pupils, which, to be fair, I saw as an over-exaggeration, but looking back on it now, maybe the stuff he said wasn't an exaggeration at all. Another female pupil described him as a disgusting human who threatened to rip her baby from her while she was pregnant. Ultimately, the foster care arrangement broke down and Amber moved into Hamilton-based Hill House Children's Unit when she was 14, but her brother remained with the Nivens until his 18th birthday in 2020. Angel McKean, who was a 19-year-old friend of Amber's there, said the siblings' relationship was turbulent, but she said when she last spoke to Amber hours before she was killed, she had been looking forward to seeing her brother. It was while in the care of the state that Amber was raped by Jamie Starrs, who attacked her after being released on bail for another sex attack. Detective Constable Ross McCaig said he had taken a statement from Amber after the sickening assault had been reported. Her statement said, quote, I was under the covers, but when I went to get up, I felt I didn't have my clothes on my bottom half. My trousers were next to me on top of the covers. I saw that the guy Jamie was asleep in the bed with me. It was light enough to say that it was him. He then got up from under the covers and he was completely naked, and he put on a red tracksuit and pulled out a blue windbreaker-style jacket. And I managed to put on my trousers on underneath the covers, and I told Jamie I was leaving. Later, in a homeless unit in Blantyre, Amber became quiet when a discussion turned to a TikTok user being falsely accused of rape, and she revealed it had happened to her. A teenage boy told staff and police were called in before Amber told them she had been raped by Starrs. She told officers, quote, the reason I think I was raped was that I woke up in a bed with no clothes on my bottom half with a boy I'd only met naked under the covers. I can't remember hugging him or kissing him at all. Tragically, she would never see her rapist brought to justice, as she was killed weeks after giving her crucial statement to police. Detective Inspector Lorraine Wilson of Lanarkshire's Division's Rape Unit said Amber's evidence was key, though, in securing his conviction. At the time of her murder, her brother was a resident at Hamilton's Blue Triangle Project, which was a hostel for homeless youngsters in Lanarkshire, while she was living at the Hill House unit. On the day she was killed, care home manager Ian Curry, who was 55, said Connor Gibson called the Hill House unit to speak to his sister. Amber was last seen that night heading out to meet her brother, and Mr. Curry tried to discourage her from going out, but she seemed excited to see him. CCTV footage from that night showed them chatting and appearing to be in good spirits as they made their way through the town. Amber even sent a Snapchat picture of the two of them to friends with a caption that said, "My big bro." They were last seen just before 10 p.m. on Church Street, where they turned onto Common Green and entered Cadsow Glen. Gibson would later return in a disheveled state and tell a project worker that he and his sister had argued. One witness said Connor looked like he fell into a ditch and was very dirty. Connor insisted to the witness that he just had, quote, family issues, that he had a, quote, bad night, and that everything, quote, everything was a bit fuzzy. He also had a bleeding cut on his left shin and complained of stings, but did not seem bothered about his appearance. Footage of him returning from the scene showed him slumping in exhaustion against a metal barrier. He then phoned Hill House saying Amber had stormed off after an argument and he wanted to make sure she'd gotten home safely. CCTV later showed him heading towards wheelie bins outside the building carrying a plastic bin. Connor's deception would continue. He told police he'd been wearing a Ranger's top and camouflage shorts, when in fact he'd been wearing a white top and gray shorts, which he was seen throwing the bin outside of his house, and they were stained with his sister's blood. A phone later seized from his residence revealed messages sent from his Snapchat to his account friends in the early mornings of November 27th, which was the day after the murder, writing, quote, "I'm really going to need you guys to help me with something when you come back. I'm being serious." A message was then sent to Amber asking, quote, "Are you okay?" before another was sent to the same previous friend saying, "Never mind, all is good." 4 days later, Connor wrote a chilling tribute to his sister on social media, quote, "Amber, you will fly high for the rest of time. We will all miss you, especially me. I love you, Ginger Midget. GBNF, which is gone but not forgotten, XX. He was arrested a day later and charged with her murder, and he also shared another post hours before his arrest in which he urged town folks to leave a light on for Amber. This guy is an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
Amber and her brother had spent much of their lives in care, but a source from their extended biological family told Mail Online that social workers from South Lanarkshire Council blocked their maternal grandparents' effort to have the children stay with them. The family member claimed, quote, "The social work department has blood on its hands." Mr. and Mrs. Niven were in court to hear the guilty verdict on their former foster son. In a statement, they said, "When they arrived in our home, Amber was 3 and Connor was age 5, and Connor stated, quote, 'We are safe.' And then Mr. Niven said they were until they took the safety away." Prosecutors said the teenager had been appallingly murdered by the brother she must have trusted. The forensic pathologist who carried out the post-mortem examination on Miss Gibson's body told the court that she was covered in mud and the cause of death was compression of the neck. Jurors also heard other forensics evidence that widespread blood staining on Gibson's jacket was compatible with Miss Gibson, and his DNA was also found on her shorts worn as underwear, which had been forcibly torn off. In his closing statement, prosecutor Richard Goodard, KC, told the jury Amber Gibson was appallingly murdered by her brother, who she must have trusted, and he named 21 different circumstances which linked Gibson to the murder and sexual assault. Sentencing Gibson to life in prison, Lord Mahalan said, quote, "You beat her about the head, breaking her nose, removing her clothing, and sexually assaulted her with intent to rape and then manually strangled her. The last person she saw was you, her brother, strangling the life out of her. What you did was truly evil." Detective Chief Superintendent Paul Livingstone, who was the head of major crimes, said, quote, "It's hard to imagine how difficult this has been for Amber's family and friends, and our thoughts very much remain with them. I hope this conviction brings some degree of comfort. The actions of both Gibson and Corrigan leaves them beneath contempt. This was a challenging and complex investigation involving a range of specialist officers from within Police Scotland, working closely with our partners in forensic services, all of whom I would pay tribute to for their professionalism and dedication while carrying out their work. I would like to thank the members of the public for their help during our inquiries, which undoubtedly assist in securing their conviction." When Connor was convicted, the former foster family of both siblings said in a statement that Amber was the most giving, loving, supportive, and admirable person, and their lives will never be the same again. They said she kept us on our toes and had the most amazing outlook on life, considering the suffering she had experienced. Amber deserved to live a life of hope and opportunities. As a family, we will never be able to get over how this was taken from her. We are relieved the people involved in what happened to her are now behind bars. However, no amount of time will be justice enough for such a young, innocent life. And Connor must serve 22 years before he can even apply for parole.
Oh, he just got sentenced recently, too. So,
and that's the story of the murder of Amber Gibson.
Well,
terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you for that story. Feel bad for that girl.
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely, to have her life sniffed out. And I mean, from her brother, she trusted him, and she was looking forward to seeing him. And it never says in any of the articles, because maybe he's not said, but I don't understand what motivated him to kill her. I mean, did he just have incestuous feelings for his sister, and he tried to have sex with her, and when she wouldn't do it, he decided to rape her, and she fought him, and so he killed her? I don't know. I don't see what motivated him to do it.
Well, clearly he's not. Clearly, the dude is not right in the head to begin with. I don't know how else to say that. I think it's tragic. I think it was tragic what happened to her. Their circumstances were tragic.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, you know what? It reminds me of a line in a movie, believe it or not. In Manhunter, the main character is like, oh, the profiler. He's man, I really feel for this dude as a child. But now that he's an adult, I'd like to blow the sick fuck out of his socks. It's one of my favorite lines in the movie. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh, okay. We said it before, we'll say it again. If you don't want to create a serial killer, don't beat your kids.
Yeah. Well,
or neglect them.
Yeah, I think it was more neglect. I didn't see anything about abuse of the kids. There was severe abuse of the mother.
Yeah.
Severe abuse from the father to the mother, or of the mother. So I don't know. Just a sad story.
Yeah, sad tale all the way around.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sticking with me through that. I appreciate it. That takes us to the end of our recording week. As always, you can find our website, nerdandmurd.com, where that's the hub for everything that we have. That is where you'll see links to everything we talk about, plus pictures from the topics we cover. Plus, we have the link to our YouTube page, which Zig so often updates.
Yes, and in this particular episode, we've got some playthroughs as well as some thoughts on the games themselves, and you can actually see what we're talking about. And you should be able to go out and get them.
Definitely check those out. City Heroes, by the way, is free. So,
woohoo!
On our website, you can also find a link to our merchandise page, or if you wish to show off your nerdery murdery fandom, please do consider purchasing some merchandise for that. That, along with our Patreon. Our patrons do help with the cost of that goes into our show. There are costs that are associated with it. Our upkeep, our website, all the various places out there that we have. Those costs do help us with the show. So please do consider either purchasing some merchandise or becoming one of our patrons. We appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for the topics we're discussing. So with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with the murdering.
Cue the music.